You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. We have a great show. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Kathryn Andries about finding your life purpose. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with Keith Anthony Blanchard about a bunch of different things, your guides and doing what you love and waking up and talking to God. So it's going to be an exciting show. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and clairvoyant readings. So if there's stuff going on in your life, a physical problem, a challenge at work, issues going on in your relationship, give me a call, send me an email. We can set up a time for a private consultation by phone, in person, or by Skype. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page guide. If you've missed an episode of Just Energy Radio, please do check out the number of different outlets we have for it. One, you can come here to the Inception Radio Network and listen. You can go to the Just Energy Radio webpage. That's www.justenergyradio.com and listen there. If you go, please do sign up for our weekly newsletter, which will keep you informed of our upcoming guests. Or you can go to our YouTube channel, where we have over 2 years, almost 3 years, although, it might be 3 years worth of archives all on YouTube that you can listen to on your smartphone while you're at work and you're supposed to be working. But shh, I didn't say that out loud. But when you're there, do subscribe to our channel. We would really appreciate knowing you're there and your support. That's it for right now. Let me tell you a little bit about Kathryn and get her on the air. Kathryn Andries is a teacher, speaker, and author. Her books include 6 Choices, 6 Paths to Find Your Life Purpose, Naked in Public, Dream Symbols Revealed, The Dream Doctor, The Big Desire, Soul Choices, 6 Paths to Finding Fulfilling Relationships, and co-author of Interpreting Dreams for Self-Discovery. She is also the producer of the video Inside the California Missions. She is the co-founder of the School of Intuitive Arts and Sciences, where she lectures and teaches extensively on the life purpose method. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, the author of Soul Choices, 6 Paths to Finding Your Life Purpose, Kathryn Andries. Hi, Kathryn. How are you?
Hello, Rita. I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm just so excited to have you here. We have some things in common, some parallel paths, which always makes the conversation even more fun because I don't know, I always find that there's a deeper connection, when you have those life parallels that happen.
Exactly. Yeah, there are no coincidences.
There aren't. And actually, I want to share with you and share with the listeners. So we did have Dr. Eric Pearl scheduled for the second hour, but he had a scheduling conflict in the 11th hour, and so that's why he will not be here if you are tuning in to listen to him. However, I had someone write to me wanting to get some information about getting some energy work done. And, we're chatting back and forth via email. And he goes, well, did you ever hear of this thing called the reconnection or reconnection therapy? And I was like, okay, that's just a little weird because I have Dr. Pearl scheduled to be on the show this Thursday. This is before it all fell apart. And I just thought that, I think people are just waking up, and accessing their intuitive selves so much more these days, and they just don't even realize it. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think it has a lot to do with the shifting of the universe and the accessibility and the openness to, talk about your intuition. And it's okay to say, oh, I had an intuitive insight. So I just think the whole opening in this field is making it easier for people to tap into their intuition and talk about it.
I know. And I think having shows on TV that make it not be so bad and so scary, going around 20 years ago or 30 years ago or more than that and saying that you're a psychic. I mean, that was just, shameful and you were going to burn in hell. And that whole perception has just really changed where people are becoming more at ease to opening those books that they never would have touched in the past.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do, with just terminology. When people hear the word psychic, it kind of has a negative connotation. But intuition has a little different connotation to it. It doesn't seem so, new agey. And, we can go back to Einstein, who basically, he relied on his intuition for most of his work. And he said it in different words. He called it, I think, imagination was what he was really referring to, was his intuition.
Exactly. So before we go on, when I have a new guest on the show, I always like to get a little bit of history for the listeners to get to know you a little bit. So what's your story? What got you interested in studying our life purpose and why we're here on Earth and dreams and all of the things that you do?
Well, I was lucky enough that I chose a family that was not at all interested in religion. So really from a young age, I started seeking my own answers. I thought, well, if religion doesn't have the answers, there must be something else out there. So I was just drawn to the library and started reading books on Ruth Montgomery and Edgar Cayce, and it sounded true to me. And I stayed on that path and started in transcendental meditation when I was about 14 and started meditating. And it was probably when I was about my early 20s. I'd finished college and I was just kind of thinking, okay, what's my life purpose really? I thought it was a job at that time. And so I went to visit an astrologer. And for the 2-hour session, I was just completely blown away by the information that I received. Everything rang so true to me. It just resonated with who I was and what I was thinking. So I said, okay, there's definitely something to this. I decided to study astrology, became an astrologer, started practicing with people. And that, of course, led me to several great schools. And one of them was the Berkeley Psychic Institute, where I know you also studied. And so I took a couple healing classes and some meditation classes. And then I dove right in and did the year-long clairvoyant program and discovered, wow, I can be clairvoyant and I can, read people's past lives, which is often what came out. So I did that program for a couple of years. And then over a period of about 10 years, I delved into the other 5 paths that I talk about in the book. I studied iris analysis, which is called Rayid iris. I did numerology, palmistry, family birth order. And then in addition to doing the Berkeley Psychic Institute readings, I learned another form of readings more similar to the Edgar Cayce style, where I actually go unconscious to retrieve past life information for people. And so all this information over about 10 years, I said, wow, I learned so much about myself. I want to put this in a format to help other people learn about themselves. So I started teaching the Discover Your Life Purpose class and then wrote the book.
Well, cool beans. And we're going to get into that and kind of let it unravel. But let's start here. do we all have a life purpose or life mission?
Well, definitely. Anybody who's here in a physical body has a purpose. And I'll give you my definition of what a life purpose is. I believe it has two components. And the first one is discovering what our gifts and talents are, developing them, and sharing them with the world. So the first one is gifts and talents. And the second part of our purpose is to work through our lessons or our karmic challenges. And so people often ask, does my life purpose change? And I say, well, yes, within the umbrella of what I'm talking about, the gifts and talents that you bring out can change over time. You know, maybe when you're in your 20s, you want to express your talent for writing. And then maybe in your 40s, you move on to, you know, a talent in painting. So the gifts and talents are always evolving, as well as the lessons. So hopefully, you know, the lessons that we worked on when we were 12 years old, you know, we're not dealing with those same ones. We've moved on and we're conquering other challenges.
But there are some people, not pointing fingers, I mean, you know, obviously, not me, but, you know, that just get really stuck. You know, they're the high school jock who's the quarterback and doesn't really move past that point. So are they really living their life purpose, or is there some issue going on with them?
Well, yeah, I mean, if somebody's stuck, it definitely is indicating some issue. And of course, usually we get stuck because there's some lesson or challenge that's holding us back, which is why I always say to people, you know, you really have to work on developing your gifts and talents. And at the same time, you know, looking at those places we don't often want to, you know, what are our challenges? What are our weaknesses? Because if we don't, those weaknesses can cause us to get stuck and block our gifts and talents. You know, let's say, for example, I had a great singing voice, but one of my challenges was I was overly self-conscious. And I said, oh, no, I'm never going to sing in public. You see, if I don't deal with that challenge, then it's going to block me moving forward with my gifts and talents.
How hard, I mean, you know, we're going to get into your book, and this is just kind of an interesting line of conversation. But how can you, is it hard for people to recognize that what they're experiencing is actually a challenge that can be dealt with or changed or overcome?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times it's really difficult to see it. Even for myself, I like to go to other people for readings instead of reading myself because it's hard to be objective. And that's why I always say these are tools, you know, the astrology, the palmistry, all these are tools that were given to us. And they can help us get out of, you know, a position where we feel stuck. These are the tools that can help us move beyond any challenging situation. And so we do need other people. We need these tools to help us see clearly what's really going on with us and what our potential is.
One of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'd like for you to maybe talk about it a little bit more, is how our purpose might be when we're 20 one thing, but when we're 40 a different thing. So are you actually talking about our life purpose changes, or it's just kind of the evolution of some bigger concept life purpose that we're looking to fulfill throughout our entire life?
Well, the idea that we're always looking to be sharing our gifts and talents and learning our lessons, that's the constant throughout our whole life. So when we stop developing our talents, when we stop learning our lessons, we just are kind of at a standstill. And that's when we're really not fulfilling our purpose. But as long as we're delving into either a new talent or furthering the talent that we're working on, we're on our life purpose. And as long as we are looking at some of our challenges and questioning why is this happening and trying to figure out what the challenge is about, learning from it and moving on, then we're definitely on our life purpose. And, you know, everybody's at different levels of their life purpose because all the energetic influences that we use, whether it's the planets and astrology or the numbers, are energy-based, which means that there's unlimited potential. So people who've done great things in their lives, you know, we could take an example like Mother Teresa. I actually talk about her in the book. You know, she's an example of somebody who really tapped the full potential of the planets, the numbers, everything that was in her charts to be able to do the great things she did. Other people may not do as much as she did in a lifetime, and it just means they didn't really fully tap into that energy potential that was there for them.
I had a question, now it just totally left my mind because I was thinking about Mother Teresa. Okay, let me just breathe here a second. I don't know. I'm sure it'll come back. Talk for a minute because it wants to come back, and it's going to bug me.
To kind of give clarity on Mother Teresa and how she was aligned with her life purpose, her sun sign, she was a Virgo, and the Virgo identity is here to learn how to serve other people, to improve the world in some way, to better the self. And so she definitely served people. She not only served a few people, she served, thousands of people in India. And her purpose extended beyond her death because, as we know, her charities continue today in India and elsewhere. So, she really was aligned with what the Virgo energy was all about, which was service to others, and bettering the self, bettering others, becoming more efficient. And that's how she was able to do all that she did, was she really tapped the potential of her astrological influences.
Mm-hmm. So the question that I had that I forgot because I didn't write it down, and when I hear other people, I think your take on it is very interesting because usually when you hear people talk about their life purpose, or when people come and ask you about their life purpose, they have these visions of, I should be somebody, or I should be something, like I should be the president. I should have my own company and be running it. You know what I mean? That there's some X at the end of the road that they should be achieving or should have achieved by the time they pass. And it doesn't sound like that's your take on the whole thing.
No, not at all. Because from the soul's perspective, the soul could care less about awards, status, money. None of that matter, especially after we, leave this physical body and move on. All that money, the awards, whatever goes with it. But what the soul's really interested in is, sharing a particular talent and learning its lessons. So whether you become you could be the president of the United States and be less on target with your life purpose than, say, somebody who simply owns a little store, but they're really in alignment with their talents and they're sharing it with other people. So we kind of have to get beyond that idea of, success and money having to do with life purpose, because that's just a byproduct perhaps of your purpose, but it is not the purpose. So we're really looking at, what does the soul want?
So what does the soul want?
Well, the soul, every soul is different, but basically the only reason the soul would choose to incarnate in a physical body is because it wanted to learn through experience, because the earth plane is the plane of experience. Everything we have to do involves experiencing it. We can't just read a book and say, oh, I got it. I'm out of here. We have to go through the experiences, which is why, there's so many opportunities. There's nothing that you could think of that you could not experience on the physical plane of existence. And so it's a great place to develop any kind of gift or talent, to share it with others, to learn any kind of lesson, whether it's a lesson in cooperation, whether it's a lesson in humility, a lesson in leadership, whatever it is, you have the opportunity to learn that being in a body in the physical plane.
Well, I always sit there and think, what was I thinking when I made the choice to come here? Because you hear people talk about, when you come here, you choose your parents, you choose your life situation, and you choose the lessons that you're here to learn. And, I joke around. It's like, what was I thinking on the other side when I came here? It's like, come on.
Right. Well, that's where the title of my book comes from. It's Soul Choices. And I do believe that as a soul, before we get in the body, that we choose everything. based on the mission that we have for ourselves. So we're going to choose the parents that are going to help us on that mission. We're going to choose the time and date of birth to give us a particular numerological and astrological configuration that's going to support us. So we choose everything. And of course, before we get in a body, things might look easier than they seem once we get in the body. So sometimes we do choose a difficult mission, but, if we carefully choose all the particulars, the influences, we really do have the opportunity to set ourselves up for success.
Mm-hmm. What about the concept of free will, though? If we've made all these decisions before we got here, then is there any free will regarding our lives?
Well, that is the beauty of the human existence, is that we were given free will. So we could literally sit on the couch our entire life and eat potato chips and do nothing else but that. And no one, the creator, no one's going to force us off the couch. So we do have free will. So we can ignore the life path that we've chosen for ourselves, and people do it every day, all the time, unfortunately. And, there's signals that we're off our life purpose, that we're ignoring it. Our physical health deteriorates. We don't feel good. We're frustrated. We're angry. All those kinds of things are signals that, because we're misusing our free will, it doesn't pay off, and we're not feeling too good about ourselves.
Well, we just had an interesting question come out of the chat room, so I'm just going to throw it in here because it fits into what we're talking. And it's from JB, and he wants to know, can we lose our soul or become soulless?
No. I mean, the soul is you. That you can lose your physical body. We do that all the time when we die, but the soul is the permanent part of you. So you cannot lose that part of you. That is the essence of who you are, basically. And that's what we take with ourselves lifetime after lifetime. The body dies, but our soul remains. And all the experiences we gain during a lifetime are stored in the soul, which houses itself in the subconscious mind. So no, you can't lose your soul.
This is interesting. So, you mentioned we could always sit on the sofa and eat potato chips. It'd be the ultimate couch potato. And what if that is our life? We are enabled our entire time growing up, and we choose to get some meaningless job that we just show up at every day, and we go home and we sit on the sofa and we watch TV. I mean, are we at all fulfilling our soul purpose? And if we're not, are there any ramifications to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely can do that. And the ramifications are basically that when you're avoiding lessons, the next lifetime may not be so easy for you. In other words, the opportunities that you were given in one lifetime, if you throw them out the window and say, I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch potato chips, well, a lot of times your next lifetime, those same opportunities won't be there, and your life becomes harder. The same thing if we ignore a lesson, or we run from it, or we hide watching TV all day. Your next lifetime, or even in this lifetime, as you move through it, the lessons will become more intense and in your face, so that you cannot ignore them. So basically, the universe rewards action. So the more that you can, be on purpose with your life, make efforts, face your challenges, the universe says, hey, this person's doing good. We're going to kind of sit back. So that's why I really believe in a proactive approach. Figuring out what your life purpose is, doing this work, and taking the steps towards fulfilling that. Then what happens is the universe steps back and says, we don't need to throw a lesson in this person's face because they're already really taking a proactive stance. And then life is on your terms instead of the universe's, and we become not the effect, but the cause of our own life. And that makes a huge difference.
See, now I'm sitting here going, okay, so what did I do in my past lives to have me deserve this junk? But anyway, just moving along, I mean, I always feel like, if, based on the concept of reincarnation, which is one of those weird ones for me, it's like, I read past lives, so I know that reincarnation occurs, and I understand what happens with the energy of the soul, seeing it, been there, done that. But for some reason, I can't own the concept fully, which is just really bizarre to me. But anyway, moving on. But I always have this feeling like, well, if I work really hard this time, then, maybe I'll be a little bit closer to nirvana the next time. Maybe I won't have to come back another, 7 billion times, or however many times you have to come back before you get to experience nirvana.
Right. And that really is, in my opinion, the goal of the work that I do is to evolve the soul. Because, like I said, everything you're doing now, every little bit of work and self-growth effort pays off, because you get to take all those understandings with you into your next life, so that it becomes easier and easier until the point where, you don't have to come back anymore, at least to this plane of existence. You get to go on to other levels of existence where life, I think, is a little bit easier.
Well, I'll wait till the report comes out on that one. But we had another question from the chat room, and this is from Bill in New York, and he wanted to know, is the soul bound to Earth confined, or does it travel through time and space?
I think at night when we sleep, the soul is definitely freed from the body. And we do travel into the astral plane when we dream. A lot of times we actually have visitations from people who have passed on, maybe a grandfather or something. So how are we able to communicate with those souls? Well, we're definitely on the astral plane where they are. So we can experience that freedom when we sleep. And then, through practices such as meditation and so forth, we can experience those states, that freedom from the body at will. People do it all the time who do astral travel, remote viewing. So the higher evolved you are with these practices, the more that you can feel that sense of freedom and not be so bound to the physical body. Because actually, when we first started incarnating in bodies during the time of Atlantis, we still had the ability to come and go from the body at will. We weren't stuck like we are now until the death. We could leave and enter the body.
Because the veil, for lack of a better word, was thinner for us?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Well, that would be kind of cool. But I mean, actually, if you think about it, if you think that daydreaming is us being in a form of astral projection, I think that there's a lot of people that are not really in their bodies very much at all.
You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, a lot of people do it unconsciously. And all of a sudden they're, not paying attention, or they're in traffic and they, weren't watching the road or something. Yeah, it happens all the time unconsciously.
Mm-hmm. So how can we begin to understand what we're supposed to be doing? And in your book, you talk about a number of things that are considered quote unquote fringe science. But can things like astrology and numerology give us clues to who we really are?
Yeah, I like to call them intuitive sciences, because I think they're definitely sciences, and there also is a little bit of intuition that I think is required to really get the depth of the message that these sciences bring us. And so these 6 sciences all do an amazing job of revealing our life purpose in terms of what are our gifts and talents, and what are the areas that we have challenges with, or that we still need to learn about. And that's what ties these 6 sciences together. So, palmistry is very different than astrology, yet it gives us the same information just from a different perspective. And so a place to start is pick any of the 6 paths. And when you go through it, my focus is always, okay, what does this chart show me about my gifts and talents? And what does it show me about my challenges, or what are my difficulties? And then you go through the other 5 paths and you make a list. So typically by, the end of doing the 6 paths, most people have a list of maybe about 20 to 25 gifts or talents that they already have, or that they could easily develop if they put in some effort, as well as they may discover as many lessons, maybe less, maybe 15 to 20 lessons or challenges that person has to overcome in a lifetime.
So when you're going through these, there is things that resonate with us, and as far as what we hear or read, and I'm kind of thinking about the challenge area in particular, where sometimes you read something and it says, oh, well, this is a challenge for these individuals, people that are Leos, this is a challenge. But if you don't experience that, is that because you worked through that challenge? Or is it because it really hasn't been a challenge for you yet? Or you see where I'm going with that question?
Yeah. Well, it could be several things. One, what you mentioned, that yes, the person's already mastered that challenge. They say, oh, yeah, I used to deal with that when I was younger, but not anymore. Or it could be that, maybe in a previous life, you've worked through that challenge, and there's another aspect of the Leo that's challenging you. So, for example, with any of the signs, we're either familiar or less familiar with them depending on our past life experiences. So perhaps if this is the first lifetime I'm choosing the Leo influence, maybe I'm challenged by many aspects of it. Maybe I'm overly egotistical and, too self-centered, as an example. But if I've had the Leo influence many lifetimes, maybe I've learned to overcome that over time, so it's not that big of a deal. So we can have several people with the same influences, but they're at different levels of working through the challenges of that influence as well as developing the talents of that influence.
Okay, kind of a weird question. So when we interact with people, for example, I'm a Leo, so I'll just say it, I'm a Leo. And I personally find that I have challenges with individuals that are, let's say, Pisces or Cancer. The ones that are the more watery, earthy kind of sign. I don't know. I don't want to say that we have issues, but you know what I mean? That we just don't connect in the same way as I do with another fire sign or an air sign. And so do you think it's because I haven't had much time incarnating into that sign or having those signs heavily influence my chart at some point in time? Or is it just part of this life experience, this lifetime?
Well, again, there's no easy answer for that when we start talking about relationships and interacting with people. There's one way to look at it, which is, yes, you're just very dissimilar people, and so you don't have much in common. So, you're on totally different wavelengths. That's one way to look at it. Another is that there's actually, whenever somebody pushes our buttons or we don't get along with a particular sign, sometimes that indicates that there's something about that sign that we need to incorporate in ourselves that we're rejecting for some reason. So, watery signs typically are very emotional. So, maybe there's something about your own emotions that you're pushing away or that you don't want to look at. That's another way to look at it. But typically, people of similar influences click together because there's just a common understanding, a common sharing of the way we look at life and the way we perceive life. So, yes, you would be more compatible or feel more comfortable with fire signs because they're like you. And air stimulates fire. So again, you'd be more compatible in terms of, friendships or mate relationships with air signs because they would stimulate you. And we all know the old saying, water puts out fire. It's all that heavy emotion just can kind of get to the fire because fire really is here to bring zest and enthusiasm. And we all know that an overly emotional, down in the dumps water sign can just, flush out all that enthusiasm. So that sometimes can explain the antagonism or the, dislike of all that water.
Well, I think dislike is, too heavy of a word, but discomfort or just really not connecting, as deep as with other people, and well, never mind. I'm not going to share this story, but go ahead. We're just going to move along. Anyway, definitely not going to share that. So when we look at these different things, so you're talking about astrology and numerology. No, you talked about astrology and palmistry. And one of the other things you talked about is numerology. So what kind of things can we discover through looking at numerology?
Well, very similar with all the sciences. Numerology is based on the vibration of numbers. And so we can take our birth date, and when we calculate all the numbers in our birth date, we come up with a number which is called the life path number. And the life path number describes basically what are we here to do this lifetime? What is the path we're here to walk? And so it's very insightful in terms of helping us understand what career we should go in, because the career, the career needs to support our life path number. And then another significant number we can calculate is based on our name, which is the expression number. And that describes the type of person that we want to be, how we want to express this lifetime.
I ended up being a 7. Just
for your
FYI.
life path or expression?
When I added up my name.
Okay, so your expression. So that would make sense in terms of you doing this radio show, because you want to be a very intuitive person that seeks the answers of the universe. Who am I? Why am I here? What's our purpose? And so, for example, choosing to do this radio show is a great avenue to support your number 7. So your radio show probably flourishes. You feel really good doing it because it's in alignment with one of your numbers.
Woo-hoo.
So you're on the right track.
That's right. Well, I regularly have spirit kick me in the butt and just push me back onto whatever track I'm supposed to be on in that particular moment. So, we have a love-hate relationship.
Well, it's great that you listen to the soul, because, when you don't, then life isn't always as fun, I would say. Not always easy. It's not always easy, but it definitely keeps you on your toes, I think, when you do listen to the soul, because the soul wants growth. So it's not going to give you this passive, easy life. It's really going to stimulate you to move and grow. And so, sometimes we say, oh, gosh, I can't believe this. I'm being, pulled into this or that. But from the soul's perspective, it's like, well, that's why you're here, was to learn and grow, not just to sit.
But I have found through my own experience that if I don't listen, I get my butt kicked. So I don't think I could be one of those couch potato people, because the universe would just keep blowing my TV up or taking away my chips or something.
Yeah,
something.
That's a good thing. Everybody gets the kick in the butt sometime, somewhere, somehow. So even the people that look like they're getting away with it, believe me, they will get the call from spirit in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They say that the eyes are the window to the soul. And in your book, you devote an entire chapter to what our eyes can tell us. And actually, other than doing iridology for health, I had never heard of somebody assessing the eyes for personality. And I was hoping you could kind of go into it, because if I haven't ever heard of it, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have never heard of it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because this study is called RAYID, which is RAYID. And Denny Johnson is the originator of this method, and it stands for ray, meaning a ray of light, shining through the id, which is the ego, and hence he called it RAYID. And so although it's similar to iridology in that it uses the eyes as a tool, it really looks at the eyes from the perspective of what is it saying about this person's life purpose, their gifts and talents, their challenges, their creative style, their love style, and on and on and on. It tells you tons of things about a person. And so it's fascinating, because what we see in the eyes are certain patterns. And there's basically 4 distinct patterns that can appear in the eye. There's a flower iris pattern, a jewel, a stream, and a shaker. Those are the 4. And then, of course, we can have combination types. And these core iris constitutions, just like, for example, your sun sign in astrology, will describe how you perceive life, how you respond to life, your talents, your challenges. And then we can see so much more. Then we look at whether the person tends to be more right or left brain dominant. We can see if the person tends to be a more inner directed or a more outer directed person. We can also tell through various rings that are seen around the periphery of the iris more things about our personality. So it's a very in-depth study, and just looks at ourselves from a little different perspective. And so the idea is, when you understand your core iris type, you want to find jobs, you want to find hobbies, you want to do everything possible to support that core iris constitution.
And so when you start comparing some of these different things together, so let's say I do, because we talk about astrology, numerology, palmistry, eyes. What have we missed?
A family birth order?
Okay. Yeah, let's go through all the different paths, and then we'll kind of wind them all together.
Sure.
So, and I've heard about family birth order before, but from your perspective, how does that all play in?
Well, the choice of family is huge in terms of a soul's purpose. We don't deal with the lessons with our parents. We end up marrying them or having them as a boss or something like that. They keep reappearing in our lives in different people in different forms. So we really want to figure out what it is we need to learn from those parents and to be grateful for the gifts that they've helped us develop. So that's one of the other paths. We've talked a little about the eyes. We've talked about numerology, and then astrology we've talked about. Basically, the astrology is going to show how all the different planets are affecting us. And so at the moment of your birth, if you took a picture of the heavens, you would see the placement of all the different planets, and that creates a certain personality imprint on a person. And so when I look at somebody's astrology chart, I really see the past, the present, and the future. We see where they could have been in past lives, what are their lessons from the past, and then we see what is their future potential this lifetime with what they've been given. And so the astrological makeup is a huge part of understanding our gifts and talents and our challenges. And then the last path that we haven't talked about is past lives. And I know you do a lot of reading, so you're pretty much aware of the impact our past lives have on us. We're really the conglomeration of all the thoughts and attitudes and ideas that we've collected over hundreds of lifetimes. And so to understand how we got to this stage in our evolution, whether you were born as a male or a female in the United States or whatever country and whatever situation and poverty and wealth, we have to look back to the past. And the beliefs and attitudes that we formed drew us to the particular situation that we were born into this lifetime. And so I often start my classes teaching about past lives and doing the past life reading first. So we get a basis of where this person came from and how did they end up where they're at today. Edgar Cayce, I love his definition of karma because he basically describes it as a set of beliefs and attitudes that keep a person stuck. So doing a past life reading and understanding our past lives can set us free from limiting or constricting beliefs and attitudes that keep us stuck in situations that don't allow us to grow. So we can break free from those now and make different choices. So those are the 6 paths, and when we put them all together, we get the complete picture of who a person is.
So when you start comparing, let's say, information that comes from, I'm not even going to say astrology because that's kind of huge, but let's say the palmistry and the numerology and the eye reading, just to make it be simpler. Do you find that you end up with parallel statements that seem to replay through these different techniques of evaluation?
Well, that's the neat thing, Rita, is that every person is different. So sometimes when we look at those 3 studies, palms, eyes, and numerology, all those charts might say the same thing, very similar things about the person, and it gets validated. Now, other people, we can look at those 3 paths, and their palms might say they're a fire palm, and yet their eyes might show that they're a water type person. So we can have conflicting information or just very different information. So every person is different in terms of whether the influences are going to show complementary things or different things.
Okay, so, I mean, the complimentary, I think, is cool because you get validated. It's like, okay, I'm on my path or not, or, it's easier to wrap your mind around. How's that?
Yes.
Well, but how do you counsel people where they're kind of all over the place?
Well, that's the challenge, I think, for people and for readers in this is the art really is how do I make all these influences work together in my life? And sometimes, when I even look at all my own charts, I feel like, oh my God, I'm schizophrenic. I'm all over the place, How am I supposed to make all these influences work together? And so there really is a way to kind of blend all your different influences together. And there's tools to help you do that. So for example, in numerology, we have what's called number bridging, where if you have 2 different numbers on your chart that say completely different things, you can bridge the 2 numbers together, which means you subtract the smaller number from the larger number. And the resulting number gives you, clues or helpful hints about how you can make those 2 numbers work together easier. That's an example. Even in astrology, when you have a lot of conflicting influences or 2 planets that aren't getting along or that say different things, like your head says one thing and your heart says another. There are other things on the chart that will show you how you can minimize that stress or that difficulty. And I teach a lot of tools to people. I'm sure you know some of them, emotional release techniques, doing breathing, doing meditation, asking for guidance. How do I make these 2 different aspects of my personality work together? And, I will say, of course, that certain people have easier charts than others. However, there's a misconception that easy is better. Actually, most of the studies show that people who have had more what we would call challenging charts, which means charts with different opposing characteristics, it creates tension, and tension seeks resolution. So those people have something to fight against. So they tend to become overachievers, because this tension causes them to seek resolution. And so they get off their butts and they do something. Whereas people who have really easy charts, a lot of times, rather than using that as a way to just bring out your gifts and talents easily, they become lazy because there's no tension to help them get off their butt. So I think, in conclusion, everybody has a chart or charts that are perfect for them. And yes, some are easier than others, but easier doesn't always mean better. So
I had this one friend, and, I keep saying Grand Trine, but that's not it, because he had the crosses everywhere. What are those called?
Yeah, there's Grand Cross.
The Grand Cross. I mean, that was his whole chart. And the poor guy was just, in my opinion, really conflicted all the time and didn't really do a whole lot of work on himself to move through his conflict. But, it was just interesting when you look at someone's chart, how really you can kind of get a sense without even knowing anything about their personality just by how the planets lay out in the wheel, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is the chart and then there's the person, because what we talked about in the beginning is, the free will. So, I remember I had a woman come to me for counseling. She was having, problems in her marriage. And I looked at her husband's chart and her chart. And from his chart, he was a perfect match for her. However, in reality, because he had free will, he was not at all in alignment or following his chart at all. And so he was not a good match for her, even though on paper it looked like a perfect match. So, there's the chart and then there's also the person.
So how can we apply what we learned from this information?
Well, what I do in the classes and what I, advise people to do, there's a workbook that goes with the book. So if you're on your own, complete the workbook, and then, writing it all down and having it on paper is just a great way to help reinforce it. And then in terms of applying it, what I tell people to do is whenever you're at a crossroads in life and you have to make a choice about something and you're not sure which way to go, what I tell them to do is I say, well, make the choice that is going to be that's going to best support all your influences. So I actually, have them open their notebooks and, let's say they're deciding on job A or job B. They would look through all the charts they've done and say, well, which job would help me best bring out my gifts and talents and support my different charts? And that's the choice they make. I also recommend that people do positive affirmations about their strengths. So they write down their gifts and talents and they post them, around the room in the mirror. So they see it first thing waking up. So it becomes ingrained, that, wow, these are my gifts and talents. They begin to own them. And, to also, not that you have to read your lessons and have them in your face every day, but to be aware of them and consciously make an effort to move towards resolving any areas that you feel challenged in. And that could be as simple as, wow, I recognize I lack being assertive. So I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to sign up to be the, leader of my club. Okay, let's say you're at a club. You could start doing simple things, but making those proactive choices so that your lessons become easier. And it's always easier to learn a lesson when you've chosen it as opposed to when the universe just gives it to you. So those are some ways I think we can apply.
So what about people that are, you have a job and you're there, and you're not really fulfilling your life purpose? I mean, would it make sense to go look for something else or try to change what's going on? Because and I'm sure you hear this all the time. People have these jobs that they're not happy with, or they're in a relationship that they're not happy with, but they don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. So is there something that they, can they get some guidance from this information, or do they really need to stop and take a step back and look at, the bigger picture of where they're at and should they move on?
Yeah, I definitely think that if you're unhappy in a job or in a relationship, it is helpful to seek guidance using some of these intuitive paths, because what they can do for you is help you identify your gifts and talents. And then what I teach people to do in terms of jobs and or relationships is to work from the inside out, which means that rather than, looking at your current job or trying to decide, should I be a nurse or a doctor, the common job themes out there, but rather write down the qualities that you want in a career. And then at the same time, write down your gifts and talents and say, this is what I'm willing and what I want to give to a company or to a job. And then through the power of visualization, you let the universe do the work. So if your current job cannot help you match your gifts and talents or help you bring them out, then that will kind of fade away and a new job will come through. There are sometimes possibilities at the current job that, people aren't utilizing. So it's not always just a quick, quit the job. But, looking a little bit deeper and making that list of gifts and talents and saying what I'm willing to give to this job. And then all of a sudden you might get a promotion.
So, but it's sounding like, and this is kind of my view on it, is if you start acknowledging and getting more alignment with your soul and your soul purpose, that the universe will help line things up and allow you to create or express those things in the appropriate manner. But it's kind of like waiting for you to get your act together to allow that to happen in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's what happens a lot, is even our own soul or the universe is waiting for us to catch up to it, because in our conscious mind, we have all these, limitations and, issues we're working out that are, sometimes holding us back. And the soul's like, hey, you're supposed to be way over here at this job. We're waiting for you to catch up to us. Or that's what the universe is saying. We've had this great job out here for 5 years. We've been waiting for you to wake up and, don't be so fearful about letting your current job go so that you can get over here. So a lot of times we do stand in our own way.
Well, I think the same thing is true with relationships. There are so many people that are looking, they're talking about, we have one comment, I'm waiting for the universe to bring me a woman. And then someone else put, I hope the universe will bring me a woman that ain't crazy. And I think people in the relationship space really run into that challenge a lot.
Yeah, they often just look for what they want from the other person. And I always teach, well, that's fine, to make your list of what you want from another person. But at the same time, also make the list of what you want to give to the other person. What do you want to put into the relationship? And then, you're sending a clearer message to the universe, not only what you want, but what you're willing to give. So when you do both of those things, you're more apt to, draw a person to you that's going to want to receive what you want to give and is willing to give what you want. And I also recommend people never attach a particular person, when they're thinking of a relationship, like I want Brian, or I want Susan, because we often think we know that person, but we don't. So what I say is, make a list of the qualities you want in a person. And then if Susan or Brian matches those qualities, then that person will come to you. But you know what? There might be somebody better out there that you never even considered. Just like sometimes there could be a better job out there. You might think, oh, I've got to have this one particular job. But maybe there's something better out there than you've never considered. And that's the beauty of the subconscious mind, is that it can see more than we can with our limited vision. And so if we just give it a little bit of information and let it do its own work, sometimes it brings us bigger and better things than our conscious mind ever would have imagined.
Yeah, I had a client who kept waiting for Troy Aikman. When was Troy Aikman going to get in a relationship with her? And I'm like, you mean like the quarterback? She goes, yeah. I'm like, do you even know him? Have you ever met this person? No. I'm like, really? Really?
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time. And, he might not be anything what she wants or needs,
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Kathryn, our time is almost up. So what do you have coming up for yourself, in the next few months or whatever?
Well, I'm just currently in the midst of doing a lot of summer book tours. So I'm in Michigan right now in the Grosse Pointe area. So I'm going to be at the Barnes & Noble in Grosse Pointe Woods this Saturday from 10 to noon, doing a workshop on what we've been talking about, finding your life's purpose. And then on Monday, the 14th, I'm going to be in Ann Arbor, Michigan, doing a workshop on dream interpretation at Crazy Wisdom Bookstore. And then in August 7th, I'll be in Santa Barbara, California, doing another workshop on dream interpretation at the State of Being Wellness Center. And all these events are posted on my website as well.
Kathryn
Andries.com.
Yes. These messages.
All right. Well, they told me that the music is rolling, and so I'm hoping we're not talking over ourselves. And so nice having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with the listeners. I think they got a lot out of it.
Thank you, Rita. It's been a pleasure.
All right. You have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Kathryn Andries. Her book is Soul Choices, 6 Paths to Find Your Life Purpose. Her webpage is KathrynAndries.com. And we will be back with Keith Anthony Blanchard after these words from our sponsors.
Right after these messages.